Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. It's your host Sarah, and I'm going to have Talon with me today. We're going to be talking about perfectionism, but I have to give you a little bit of a heads up. I don't know what happened to the audio in this episode. The quality is not very great. I've never had it just randomly make these weird, stopping sounds. I don't love it, but I'm not techie enough to figure it out, and I accept that about myself. So if it's annoying, I super apologize. Feel free to skip this episode if that's the case for you. But if it's not the case for you, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Sarah, and I have Talon here with me today. Hi, baby.
Hi.
Hi. And we're going to talk about a topic that just keeps coming up over and over and over and over again in my work recently with people, which is the idea of perfectionism. Leslie and I sort of talked about this really briefly in past episodes where we talked about kind of the ways in which we attempt to keep our primary caregivers close, and especially how people with ADHD often develop that kind of classic perfectionist, high achieving classroom sort of profile. And I thought it would be interesting to think about how perfectionism relates specifically to borderline. And when I was in my training the other day, there was this really interesting concept, which, but I immediately took it and started running with it in sessions, which is that perfectionism makes us compromise our core values. So what do you define perfectionism as?
Well, I guess I define perfectionism as the unrealistic attempt, desire, ability to do everything to a level that is perfect. So perfectionism is different to every person because of their perspective of the world and what they think perfect is, right?
Yeah, culture, all of that.
Culture, sex, gender, everything. So I think perfectionism is essentially just, your desire, your want, and again, the unachievable need. It's this need to be or do or say or act or exist in perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes without saying, but here I am saying it. One of the most damaging parts of our society is this social media, you only put out what's pretty. And that contributes so heavily to perfectionist culture. We were just talking about this because I'm loving gardening, but I'm so afraid by the idea that any of my seeds that I grew to start and I'm now putting in the ground will not grow, will not come to fruition, I guess. And I have this profound sense that if my garden doesn't work, quote unquote, that I am a failure. And I was telling Talon, and I was like, but I see all of these beautiful gardens on social media. I want a pretty garden. And my garden isn't fucking pretty. Every single thing in our garden is recycled. I have not bought a garden bed. I don't have an electric mower for our garden section, and the grass is out of control, or a gas mower, because we only have a riding lawnmower. Well, you can't ride the lawnmower into the garden area. Sorry, that's going to destroy my garden. So it does look a little bit messy. And when I was going and I was having him walk through today and looking at what I had done, and I was just it looks so bad. And I know that's just the perfectionist, and it feels icky, but it's also there because I let myself scroll through social media and see all of these quote unquote pretty gardens.
And what do we say? Like, those people are professional influencers. Those people have paid a lot of money. Those people's gardens are way older than yours, and we don't garden for social media, right? Like, that's a way to, like,
Well,
talk
and
about.
their gardens are not set on grass. They removed the grass.
Right, right. Yeah, most of the gardens you're looking at have all these really beautiful paved pathways or, like, gravel pathways, all these different walkways and things like that. And, like, you and I were talking the other day about yards in general and about how all these yards that we see or want our yard to look like are old. These people have been working on their yard for 5, 10, 8 million years. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't. So I think that that's an important thing to understand in this specific realm of, like, goals and wants and desires and perfectionism. It's like,
Well, isn't it just funny how it shows up? Like, to me, my garden does feel like high stakes. I understand at the end of the day, because I am privileged and don't have to rely only on the food that I grow, that it's not high stakes, but it feels like it.
right. Well, I mean, it's high stakes for, like, your
Emotional health.
emotional health, I guess, and maybe, like, your ego a little bit. Like, it's, like, high stakes for, like, you to prove your worth once again, right? And that's, like,
I don't think that's ego.
well, I just said I don't know if it's,
Unless
I
we're
don't
referring
know.
to, like, the id and the
Yeah.
ego,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
very
yeah.
Freudian, then yes.
Yeah, well, I didn't go to Psychology 101, so all I know about that is from what I've seen on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, like, remember, because I had that episode about that. Remember the beer bat episode? Remember where Buffy was, like,
where they
the
turn
fantasy
into... Is that when they turn into
cavemen?
cavemen?
Yeah, yeah. And remember Buffy's having that fantasy about Parker. Remember
Yeah,
during
Parker
class?
was a lame.
Yeah, he was a lame-o. But anyway,
That word is not appropriate anymore. I'm sorry for anyone who was offended by that.
lame-o.
Yeah, lame is
Oh,
historically
like-
referring to
like-
people with
like-
disabilities who have, like, a leg that is not
Yeah, like, you're busted
functioning or
up. Yeah.
So perfectionism is defined as relentlessly striving for flawlessness, setting excessively high standards, and being overly critical of oneself when those standards are not met.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think perfectionism shows up for you?
I don't know. I'm blanking. I'm sure it does. When I think about perfectionism, I don't think of myself as a perfectionist. I don't think that that's something I struggle with. You're looking at me like I'm so crazy. Well, not crazy, but you're looking at me like, oh, okay.
I think it shows up in your art.
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Like, to the point that you don't even, like, consider yourself an artist. You're just like, I paint and I draw and I tattoo.
Yep.
But you're not, like, a tattooer. You're just someone who paints and draws and tattoos.
Yep.
You like art and do art, but you're not an artist.
Yep.
So I think that's perfectionist. And I think, that's made harder by the fact that you are close with and were raised with now some of the greatest tattooers in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Like, if you're always going to compare yourself to Kyle Stalker, then, like, yeah, you fucking suck. And you should never pick up ink and, needle again, because that guy is from a different fucking planet.
And you know what's so funny is he's, like, the most supportive guy ever and thinks I'm great.
That's always true of people who are talented.
He's very
And you're
talented.
the same way. You're talented and you talk to me like I have talent.
Well, you
Like,
do.
well, but do you know what I mean? Like, is that not the root of the evil of perfectionism? Is it, like, makes us feel disconnected from people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably true. I think, like, when it comes to perfectionism, I don't really fall into the category of, like, everything has to be perfect exactly this way, but I do fall into the category of, like, my standards for myself are, yeah, unachievable, right? Like,
I do like that you're open to people and yourself getting to the end result in an alternative method. Like it doesn't all have to look one way.
Yeah.
And you don't expect yourself to have it look one way. Like I do feel like you are accepting of the fact of like, yeah, I quit tattooing after my wife died and now I'm tattooing 10 years later.
Yep.
But I sort of feel like you expect yourself to be like you were tattooing the last 10 years. Even though you're okay with the fact that you weren't
Right.
tattooing for those years.
Yeah, I definitely like in my head I'm like, why am I not better at this? I've been doing this forever.
Well, here's the other thing. And
but I haven't been.
Oh my God, this is a great example. We don't even need to talk about me. Perfectionism totally sucks the joy out of things, right? It like absolutely takes the joy out of art then.
Yeah.
But I know that's not true for you all the time. And you are getting better at seeing like, holy shit, that went really well. My line work was really crisp. I like the way that I like, did the color work there, especially because you don't do color work very often.
Not for lack of desire, lack of people wanting that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the fine line stuff.
Lord help us.
But it absolutely sucks the joy out of life. And yet, and we know that, and yet we find ourselves doing it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, like, I think that I would be worse if I hadn't taken, like, a 10-year hiatus, right? Like, because, like, my inner critic now is nowhere near as brutal as my inner critic was 10 or 12, 13 years ago. Like, it
does get easier as you get older.
One, like, removing myself from that environment was really, really important for me developmentally. I think I've talked about this before, but I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but my entire identity was linked to my job and who I thought that made me. And then, so, like, leaving tattooing, and then later, 4 or 5 years later, leaving piercing in the industry altogether for the most part, besides the occasional, like, helping out a buddy or something like that, really, like, forced my hand in, like, figuring out, like, okay, like, you're not your job. Who are you? And so, like, I think, like, when it comes to, like, this thing that you're doing, art, tattooing, whatever, piercing, even shit, when you're doing it around other people who do it, and you are a really harsh critic, everybody around you is a really harsh critic, and, like, in that line, they should be, like, that's what we're all there for, is, like, to make each other better, right? In theory, in that perfect world, it's like, yeah, you should be, like, around people who are going to push you. And I was not at a stable enough place to be pushed as hard as I was being pushed. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, like, this was my identity. So if I failed at this, then I was not a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And having that be so directly linked to my identity was like every criticism on my art was a criticism on me. And it slowly just chipped away and eroded any self-confidence and any self-esteem and any, like, anything that I had tethering me to, like, anything solid, if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense.
And so, like, that really fucked me up. And I've told you this before, but again, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but, like, I don't really know who I was before I started my tattoo apprenticeship. I don't remember that person. But I do know that I think a lot of, like, my masking behavior and a lot of, like, my, I don't know how to say it, but I am very different.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, Becca getting sick and passing away, I was very different. And then transitioning and all of these things, and then I was very different. And I just now feel in the last like probably like maybe 6.5 years, I'm finally getting back to myself. And getting into kitchens was a big part of that. Like where I was just like, no, I'm just gonna be me and I'm gonna be just as like unhinged and as just like whatever as I am, because I don't have to be anything other than a person who just works in the basement. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't that like weird social expectation for me.
Yeah.
And I still find myself like slipping back into like heavy masking and people pleasing and all these things, and all of those I realize now are responses from past hurts. So I guess my long-winded thing is that like I am so glad that I stepped away from the industry and then came back. Because I do think that my internal critic was way too harsh, turned way up. And I think honestly, like I was doing more damage to myself than the people around me were. I could hear their voices in my head saying, you suck, you're not good enough, the fuck is that? What is this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. None of those things were them saying those things to me after a while. That was just my own stuff, and it just sounded like them. And even to this day, I can hear like when I draw a rope, when I draw a traditional rope, I can hear the person who said like, what the fuck is that? That looks weird. I can still to this day. It's like, this looks so weird. It doesn't. It's fine. And I've had to like really step back and be like, it's fine. We'll just leave it. It's good enough. I had to get really comfortable with good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can tell what it is. Maybe it's not the right shape, but you know what? We're going to paint it and we're going to do it and we're going to move on. And our next rope is going to be better, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I like the idea of like getting comfortable with good enough, because it's never going to be perfect.
I actually saw this thing on the internet the other day that said, your art always looks like you drew it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I experienced that so intensely. I just look at it and I'm like, ugh, I can tell I drew that. You know what I mean? Where other people, I'm like, oh my God, that looks so good. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't see, you know, any of the mistakes they can see, you know? But yeah, so. But I liked that. Your art always looks like you drew it.
Well, yeah, you're always looking at your life through your own lens.
Right.
And then your lens is always, you know, muddied by whatever experiences you've had until you do the work to unmuddy it. And so, like, I'm really focusing on, you know, unwiring and rewiring these neural pathways that tell me how fucking stupid I am and what a piece of shit I am and that I should go fucking die. Like, every time I hear my brain saying that, I'm trying to catch it and I'm trying to at least go neutral. Like, I'm trying to talk back. It's not something I'm capable of doing when I'm like severely dysregulated.
Sure.
But I did catch myself doing that the other day. I was saying like, I'm bad at work. And then I stopped. It was like a file review or something, one of the hospital file reviews that I do. And I thought there was an issue with like the tracking on the Excel. I thought that I missed something and I was like, I'm bad. And I stopped and I was like, no, I'm not bad. With the damn near 1,000 files I've read since July, I was bound to have missed one at least by now.
Yeah, I mean, that's basic math.
Right. That's just, you know, but I wouldn't have told myself that before my therapist and I started doing that work. And so like, that was a good example of me at least neutralizing the negative self-talk.
That's a good example of your perfectionism and how like you can't miss a file.
Well, in our field, so this is what's really hard is like in tattooing, you really shouldn't fuck up someone's art on their body. But
yeah,
like,
ideally.
Like in my career, yes, everybody has autonomy and agency. to do what they're going to do with their life. So like if a therapist fucks up, quote unquote, at the end of the day, like a person still has autonomy and agency to do what they're going to do. But also like if we fuck up somehow and it negatively influences a person and they make a choice to end their life, that's literally life or death.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are higher for sure.
I've had a client die by suicide before.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with me.
No, but you still wonder.
You live with that.
Yeah.
I've been subpoenaed to court.
Yeah.
I've had lawyers call me directly. I've had to testify.
Yeah.
You make a CPS call and you hope that it's going to result in something to keep a kid safe. If you think, man, looking back, I probably should have made that call and I didn't make it. I wonder where that kid is at now. Like,
yeah.
But in this case, if I had missed the file, the timeline would have been off, but that's a federal rule.
Right.
So I'm behind on a federal law.
Yeah.
You know, so like it's easy to get caught in these like perfectionist standards of what you should and shouldn't be like as a therapist. And I know that I am riding the line often between what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate to always say in therapy, because I have some impulsivity and things like that.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not going to show up in a fucking sweater and not say fuck, okay? Like, so if that is not what you're okay with as a therapist, and I'm not the therapist for you. Like those things are like whatever. I've accepted that with perfectionism, but then the other piece of like I have such rigid standards for myself around like process and outcomes because it feels really high stakes to me. And like I started in this field when I was 17 years old and I've only worked in this field and I'm 31 years old now. And I worked at, for the state starting when I was 20, and I fucking promise you the state doesn't fuck around with their laws. Like,
yeah, they don't so care.
I have very black and white thinking. And when it comes to my work, I often find myself stuck in the, like, if I can identify a place that I made a mistake, then I'm immediately bad. I'm losing my career. I'm losing my house. My life is falling apart.
Yeah.
So I think the like black and white thinking and the perfectionism also ends up telling us this idea about our future that isn't true. It becomes very dangerous in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
like even sitting here now, I'm like thinking about the fact of like, oh my God, I said I've had a client who died by suicide. Oh my God, maybe I shouldn't be saying that. Who's going to report me about that? Oh my God, what does that mean about myself and my career and my life? Like I literally just went into that spiral of like, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, it's
like, let's be real.
It's a rabbit hole.
Therapists all the time have people who die by suicide who are on their caseloads. I didn't break HIPAA.
Oh.
This isn't a case I was involved in terms of like any outcomes. You're allowed to say something like, I've had a client die by suicide before.
Yeah.
You're not breaking any laws.
No.
But I immediately get so caught up in the like idea of what it should be like to be a mental health professional.
Right.
That I then tell myself I'm bad for not being what I tell myself it should be. And that's like, if we go back to the definition of perfectionism,
that's what
you're setting excessively high standards for yourself.
Yep.
Nobody is sitting in front of me and telling me that these are the standards. I mean, in this moment about that comment, and anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild ride.
It's a wild ride. It's a wild ride. Okay, so this is interesting though. So there's 3 different types of perfectionism, which I was not aware of.
Me either. You always know the types. There's always
the
types.
Subtypes.
Yeah, like what were what were those types of types that we talked about that one time?
The types of types that one time.
Yeah,
I'm not going to let you continue that because How am I supposed to?
It was emotional, monetary, physical.
Types of abuse.
No, boundaries.
Oh, boundaries.
See, I got it.
Okay, so there's
Sorry.
3 types of perfectionism. The
Okay.
first is what we tend to think of. It's sort of like classic perfectionism. It's called self-oriented perfectionism, where you demand the perfection from yourself.
Okay.
There's socially prescribed perfectionism, which is something I really struggle with. It's believing others expect you to be perfect.
You do struggle with that.
I know. And then number 3, and I think I do sometimes struggle with this also,
You do.
which is other-oriented perfectionism, expecting perfection from others.
Yup. You do.
I think sometimes those of us with borderline, especially when we're splitting, really get stuck in that, like,
Yes.
you need to be
This
like,
thing.
Today we had conflict, and
Yep.
like, it didn't occur to me until very later that I was like, I didn't even give him a chance to have a second to process.
Yep.
Like, it was already like, you fucked up.
Yep.
You didn't know what I was, blah, blah, you, instead of like me needing to take time.
Yep. And when I tried to tell you that, you were like, no. I was like, okay.
Well, you can't very easily tell me in the moment, and that's the problem.
The irony is not lost on us here.
No. So perfectionism and BPD. So perfectionism for folks with BPD is often a coping mechanism. It's a way in which we manage our fear around rejection. Because
how does that work?
Well, if you keep yourself perfect, who wants to leave you?
Oh, I understand.
Which isn't true. People are going to leave no matter what. Like Brad Pitt literally left Jennifer Aniston.
Right.
Like, you can be perfectionism in the 90s and still get left.
Yeah, that's true.
For Angelina Jolie, who never should have left the Bob Thornton, because he is in fact perfect. That is my perfect man.
He's a little old for her, but yeah.
That is my perfect man. That is the man who would crush my heart over and over again and leave me coming back for more.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, it's a way of avoiding the fear of rejection that you tell yourself is coming, because you're like, if I can just be better and better and better, then they won't want to leave me.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So it creates like a sense of stability.
Okay.
It can also like help people feel like they're controlling an environment that's really chaotic. I'm thinking
another like grasp at stability.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of like the teenager being raised in a chaotic home environment and always wanting to like be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they keep everything really neat. Their homework's always done, and they like their clothes are always clean, and all these things because they're like other stuff that they can't control is out of control.
Yeah,
interesting.
And then the self-criticism and shame people with borderline have, that can be often fueled by like realizing you're not perfect. Like that I keep working for perfectionism. I keep studying for the test, and then I keep getting a B instead of an A. And why am I so stupid? Right? Just like all those neural pathways that I'm working to rewire.
Right.
Like directly linked to perfectionism. One of the quotes is like, I made a mistake. I'm so worthless. I have to be perfect to be lovable.
Yeah.
I know I felt that way with my dad growing up. I felt like I really needed to be like a good athlete in order to be like
worthy,
validated.
Yeah.
Like that was a way in which he felt comfortable providing validation. Like that was like common ground. And so then it's like, well, of course I want to just get better and better because I'm trying to soak up the common language of care and love, I guess.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
That's hard.
it was hard.
That's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it was a lot. Especially because both my parents played college ball, and then I, by the time like senior year came around, had already been raped once or twice and was like
Yeah, you're a mess.
having a college boyfriend and blacking out at parties, and like I like had decided I was done. And so like of our little family, I'm the only person that didn't play college baseball or softball.
You're like, yeah, no.
Yeah. I'm that oddball out.
Do you ever, good pun, do you ever wish that you did?
In a different universe where I wasn't me, yeah, but as someone with borderline, no. Playing team sports is really hard when you have BPD.
Yeah.
And at that age, I wouldn't have been treated for BPD yet, so no.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made that choice.
Yeah.
Like, knowing what I know now, if I could go back and be like treated for borderline with the medications and stuff that I'm on and have like some social skills, and if I could be less traumatized, then I would, because I loved it.
Yeah.
But no, team sports are really hard with this mental health disorder,
Yeah.
in my experience.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever asked you that before.
Yeah. We don't really talk about that part of my life that much.
No. No. But seeing you in your softball uniform in that picture the other day was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a wide stance.
Made it real.
Yeah, it was just nice to like, because we don't talk about that part of your life very often, you know? Not for any reason other than I think we just don't, but it was just nice to like see you, you know, like instead of like just imagining it. You know? Does that make sense? It was just nice to see like a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you have a wide stance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So other than my work, how do you see perfectionism showing up?
Here in you?
Yeah, for me.
Oh, the dogs.
The dogs.
Huh? Yeah, the dogs. The dogs for sure. I think are a big, I don't know if trigger or whatever expectation. But like if the dogs are not well behaved or what you think they like how you think they should be behaving in that moment. Cause I don't want to like make you seem like, you know, like super strict dog mom. Like, no, like, because like there are times and days and moments that like you just blow my doors off with, you're like, meh, they're dogs. You know what I mean? So like, I know, you know, they're dogs. And like you let them dogs more often than not. And then you have these moments where like, I don't know whether it's your own dysregulation or you're just not feeling it that day or whatever, but
Well, it's people expect dogs to be so well behaved,
Right.
especially dogs like ours.
big
Like,
ones, yeah.
and our dogs are not aggressive or unkind, although Storm can sound like she is sometimes.
She's such a jerk.
But like, I get really paranoid about what people think about me based on if my dogs are pulling on their leash or whatever. And then I feel like people are staring at me, and then I feel like people think I'm bad. And then I'm just like, fucking ship up or ship out.
Yeah. So that's interesting. But yeah, you definitely like, I think like the dogs are a big like catalyst for like perfection, what you like experience for perfection for sure. And like it sucks because like anybody who has dogs and anybody who has working dogs or dogs knows that sometimes those guys just wake up from their cute little dog sleep and they just decide, I'm gonna be wild today. I'm gonna be crazy today. Like no explanation. They're just, you know what, my commands today? Nah. Oh, the garbage. Yeah, I'm getting into that. Oh, I'm gonna run away, frolic across the neighborhood, not listen, let my mom scream her fucking head off at 8 a.m. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. That sounds great.
Well, I do have to scream for them when that happens because
Yeah.
they need to come home. We have Bear.
Yep. But sometimes they don't do that. So like, sometimes I think our dogs just wake up, and I read this thing that was like, your dog is never being naughty on purpose. They don't wake up like, I'm going to be bad today. But I think sometimes they get wild hair and they're like, you know what? I'm young, wild, and free. Let's just have a wild and carefree day. And you're like, no, bro. And that's hard, you know what I mean? And then sometimes I think sometimes that the dogs aren't being inherently unmanageable, and for whatever reason, your capacity for that is very low or very small, you know? And I find that it's when your capacity is really small, that like your perfectionism almost goes into like double time. Instead of just being like, you know what, I don't have the capacity for y'all today. You're being too wild. It's like,
Yeah, it's interesting.
you know, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. And it's hard for me to decide if this is like perfectionism or if it's black and white thinking,
Yeah, I
or
don't know.
if they're one and the same.
I kind of
Because I
feel like they're one and the same.
perfectionism is a type of black and white thinking. The
Yeah.
more we talk about it, black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking, meaning something is either all good or all bad.
Right.
That's what splitting is essentially. But it's interesting because it doesn't happen all the time. Like I feel the way I feel about my career 100% of the time and have to constantly work at it.
Right.
And it doesn't always happen like that with the dogs, or it doesn't always happen like that with my makeup, but other times it has to, and if it doesn't, it all comes off.
Yeah, and like I experience that with like art. I don't feel like that 100% of the time, but when I do feel it, I fucking feel it. You know what I mean?
It's debilitating.
It is. It really is debilitating. It's shitty feeling because you have all these other times where you don't feel like that. To be like, well, why now? Why this time? What the hell is happening right now? You know what I mean? Or at least that's how I experience that. It's annoying.
Yeah.
It's really, really annoying. And it's almost like, for me at least, being annoyed by it makes it more debilitating.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like a lack of like self-acceptance, or I don't know, a lack of something, but like, it's like, oh my God, I can't do this thing right now. And usually, not even usually, but like, oh, right now, I really just can't hang without being able to do this. And then that annoys me. And then I'm annoyed that I'm annoyed. And then it just makes the whole thing just this big ball of freaking shitty energy. And I'm just like, toast, I'm done. You know?
Yeah.
And then I'm like short-tempered with everything else. And it's just like this one thing set off all these other things, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the next part of this podcast is going to be just me because I'm waiting on more responses from people.
Oh.
The next part of the podcast, I'm going to read some responses from folks about how perfectionism impacts them.
Oh.
And you're going to be at work, so I'm going to do that on my own.
I'm going to be at work?
Well,
I'm going to be at work.
I'm going to wait and let it get some responses overnight.
Oh, yeah. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. So before I say goodbye to you, do you have any last thoughts on perfectionism?
Well, yes. It's unattainable. Nothing is perfect. And in that, everything is perfect.
Oh, okay.
I'm really existential today.
Okay.
No, but for real though, it's unattainable. And that, for me at least, gives me a little bit of like comfort, I guess, you know? Like, that's how I fact that.
I love that for you.
You know,
that doesn't work for me.
Doesn't always work for me either, but sometimes it works. Sometimes it's like very comforting, and then in the moment I'm maybe not as zen about it, but
I feel like that's something Anthony Bourdain would have said, which is a terrible example for this podcast, probably, but we do love him. Rest in peace.
Yes, a wonderful human being.
I wonder if he had borderline. We shouldn't hypothesize like that, but that was, I feel like, something he would have said or written. He was very existential like that.
He was an amazing writer too. Very talented man.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Because of the icky audio quality, I'll be back next week with listener questions and listener responses about your experience with perfectionism. Thanks for listening. Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That is super helpful for me. It helps us find additional folks who want to listen to the show, want to feel seen, family members who want to learn, and partners who want to understand. If you want to follow along to more than just the podcast, find us on Instagram at Bold Beautiful Borderline, find me at Borderline from Hell, or head over to boldbeautifulborderline.com where there's information, resources, a place to leave a voicemail to be heard on the podcast, which I love, and just general content. All of that information can be found in the show notes. And if you want to get exclusive content, which is bonus episodes, journal prompts, worksheets, all sorts of extra stuff, sometimes videos of me with my hair very crazy with kind of impulsive borderline rants, head over to Patreon and consider becoming a member. That is super helpful with creating content that allows me to destigmatize BPD and all of the other wild mental health struggles that we discuss on the podcast. A huge thanks to everyone who joins on the podcast to share their story and just generally helps keep this thing alive. Especially my friend Corey Evans from the Evergreen Band. He produced and created the music that is the intro and outro for this show, as well as the cover art that was created by my husband, Talon Abbott. Their information is found in the show notes. All of the information discussed in the podcast is purely personal experience. This is not medical recommendations. This is not therapy recommendations. There's no producer for this show. It's all me.